Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The program will begin shortly, so we ask you to please take your seats. Buenos días, señoras y señores. Gracias por acompañarnos. Les pedimos que por favor tomen sus asientos. El programa está a punto de comenzar. Gracias. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias, bienvenidos. Who's ready to see Panama win tonight? We are very excited for the conversations today. Welcome back to the Americas Together, confronting shared challenges and building shared prosperity. I'm Salomé Ramirez Vargas. I'm the Assistant Director of Communications at the Adrian Arch Latin America Center at the Atlantic Council. And what a great day we had yesterday with conversations on sports diplomacy, critical minerals, nuclear energy, security, logistics. We were honored to host U.S. Ambassador to Panama, Kevin Marino Cabrera, Minister Julio Molto of Panama, who is joining us again today, Ambassador Ana Inés Delgado, Ambassador Jose Miguel Alemán, and the many government, business, and diplomatic leaders who joined the conversation. Today, we continue an exciting program with ministers, government leaders, business executives, and innovators discussing trade, investment, the future of the Panama Canal, and opportunities across the Americas. We have a full program ahead, so we invite you to stick around to hear all the conversations and remain on your seats. We're gonna have some food later, so please join me in welcoming Jason Marsack, Vice President and Senior Director at the Atlantic Council's Adrian Arch Latin America Center.
Bueno, muy buenos días a todos y bienvenidos a este segundo día de las Américas Unidas, enfrentando desafíos compartidos, construyendo nuestra prosperidad compartida. Para mí es un gran placer empezar ese día, no solamente ese día muy importante para este foro, pero día importante para Panamá y el equipo de fútbol de Panamá. Con muchas expectaciones esa noche. Para mí, qué tan excelente estar en Panamá hoy día para este partido. Pero antes del partido tenemos todo un día de programación, empezando con el ministro de Comercio y Industrias, Julio Molto. Y para mí es un verdadero honor empezar el día presentándole. En un momento en que Panamá ocupa un lugar central en la agenda hemisférica, como anfitrión de líderes de toda la región y como país cada vez más estratégico en la reconfiguración de las cadenas de suministro, el papel del ministro Molto no podría ser más relevante. El ministro Molto combina una amplia experiencia en el sector privado con una clara vocación de servicio público. Entiende de primera mano lo que se requiere para atraer inversión aquí en Panamá, para hacer crecer empresas y competir en la economía global actual. Hoy, desde el gobierno, está ayudando a traducir esa experiencia en una estrategia nacional de crecimiento. Desde la promoción de exportaciones y el fortalecimiento del clima de inversión hasta el posicionamiento de Panamá como un destino clave para la capital global, el ministro Molto desempeña un papel central en la próxima etapa de desarrollo económico del país. A título personal, también quiero destacar que he podido ver de cerca su liderazgo a través de distintos espacios de colaboración con Atlantic Council, no solamente ayer, pero muchas oportunidades en Washington en el pasado, incluyendo el apoyo de su ministerio a nuestro grupo de trabajo sobre seguridad económica entre Estados Unidos y Panamá. Ministro, bienvenido. Es un gran gusto tenerle con nosotros.
Muy buenos días a todos. Muchísimas gracias, Jason, vicepresidente y director senior del Adrian Arch Latin America Center del Atlantic Council. Gracias al Atlantic Council siempre por estas oportunidades. A todos los participantes, miembros del sector privado, diplomáticos aquí presentes, realmente este es un foro que permite casualmente un poco lo que Jason remarcaba, que estemos aquí casualmente acompañándolos en la apertura de esta jornada del día de hoy. Como bien lo dices, ayer fue sumamente exitoso y definitivamente esto que han organizado en el marco de esta número 56 de la Organización de Estados Americanos ha sido muy importante para Panamá. Como todos sabemos, las Américas en este momento representan y atraviesan un momento que es particularmente interesante. Por todas las coyunturas, las decisiones que hay para toma de inversión están tomando y tendrán, sobre todo, un impacto profundo sobre la forma en que producimos, en la forma en que comerciamos y también en la forma en que generamos empleo durante los años venideros. Empresas de todo el mundo están ampliando sus operaciones, incorporando nuevas tecnologías y desarrollando estrategias que les permitan atender los mercados que cada vez son más dinámicos. Este proceso abre oportunidades para las Américas y sobre todo para nuestra región. América cuenta con talento, con capacidad empresarial, con recursos estratégicos y una posición cada vez más relevante dentro de las cadenas de suministro y de la economía mundial. También existe un creciente interés por fortalecer los vínculos económicos dentro del hemisferio y sobre todo desarrollar nuevas plataformas que nos permitan innovar la producción y sobre todo los servicios. Panamá participa activamente en esta conversación. Nuestro país ha construido una trayectoria asociada al intercambio, a los negocios internacionales y a la conexión entre mercados. Esa experiencia nos permite comprender que estas necesidades y sobre todo comprender las necesidades de las empresas que buscan expandirse y acompañar sus proyectos con una plataforma que les facilite operaciones regionales y globales. Cada inversión incorpora nuevas capacidades a una economía. Trae consigo conocimiento, tecnología, especialización y oportunidades para los profesionales, emprendedores y los proveedores totales y locales. Por esa razón, la promoción de inversión representa una prioridad para nuestro país. Aspiramos a que más empresas se establezcan en Panamá, centros regionales de operación, plataformas de servicio, proyectos industriales, actividades tecnológicas y nuevas iniciativas orientadas a los mercados de las Américas. Este objetivo se apoya en fortalezas que son fortalezas concretas. Contamos con una ubicación geográfica que todos conocemos, una ubicación geográfica que es privilegiada, una amplia conectividad marítima con el Canal de Panamá, una amplia conectividad aérea con el Hub de las Américas y el Aeropuerto Internacional de Tocumen, una economía que está abierta al comercio internacional dolarizada y una plataforma de servicios que ha evolucionado durante las décadas para responder a las necesidades de compañías que operan a escala global. Nuestra experiencia como país también demuestra que el crecimiento económico genera mejores resultados cuando se construye con alianzas y sobre alianzas a largo plazo. Las empresas prosperan cuando encuentran estabilidad, transparencia, talento, conectividad y un entorno favorable para desarrollar sus proyectos. Y eso es lo que ofrece Panamá. Los países prosperan cuando estas inversiones generan empleo para sus ciudadanos, conocimiento y nuevas oportunidades para su gente. Y eso es lo que desde los gobiernos debemos buscar. Esta relación entre Panamá y Estados Unidos ocupa un lugar especial dentro de esta visión que nosotros tenemos de país. Nuestros países mantienen una sólida relación económica, comercial y empresarial que estamos impulsando y que queremos seguir impulsando. Esta relación ha continuado evolucionando y ofrece muchas oportunidades más ahora para ampliar la cooperación en áreas vinculadas con la inversión, la tecnología, la energía, los servicios y la seguridad económica. En ese contexto, valoramos las iniciativas como el US Panama Economic Security Task Force, impulsado por Atlantic Council. Este esfuerzo refleja el interés compartido que tenemos ambas naciones por identificar oportunidades, nuevas áreas de colaboración y fortalecer una agenda económica común orientada al crecimiento, a la prosperidad, a la innovación y la generación de oportunidades. La tecnología y la transformación digital, como todos sabemos, están ampliando sus posibilidades y las empresas y de las personas, sobre todo, Panamá quiere participar activamente en esta nueva etapa, fortaleciendo capacidades, desarrollando talento y promoviendo un entorno que favorezca la innovación y el emprendimiento. Las conversaciones que tendremos hoy, a partir de que inicien los paneles, serán precisamente en ese espíritu, un espíritu de colaboración, un espíritu de intercambio de ideas y construcción de alianzas capaces de generar resultados concretos para nuestras naciones. Panamá recibe este diálogo con entusiasmo, definitivamente con la convicción de que las mejores oportunidades surgen cuando los gobiernos trabajan juntos, cuando apoyamos a que las empresas y las instituciones trabajen alrededor de objetivos que sean compartidos. Agradezco una vez más al Atlantic Council, a USA House y a todos los participantes por elegir a Panamá como sede de esta conversación. Es importante para nosotros. No me queda más que desearles una jornada productiva y muchos éxitos en todas las deliberaciones que tengamos el día de hoy. Muchas gracias. Buenos días.
Thank you, Minister, for those very insightful remarks. We are gonna move on now to a panel about capital and code and understanding the AI's next wave. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Aaron Stanley, CEO of Promenade Advisory.
Check. Okay, there we are. Hey, everybody. Great to be here. Thanks, everyone, for coming out this morning. Apologize, I'm a little bit disabled at the moment. I had a running accident last week. I twisted my ankle, but the show must go on, as they say. So we are here at USA House, thanks to Atlanta Council, thanks to the Stromback Group for hosting this, and really excited to be here. And we're actually going to be talking a bit about so we're actually talking about the AI panel a bit later this afternoon. We're actually talking about digital assets, payments, tokenization here this morning. So we've got a very exciting panel here. We have Sushil Prabhu, who's the CEO of Drop. We have Johan Hernandez of Tower Bank, Panama local, both Johan himself as well as Tower Bank. Great to have a local voice in the panel. And then we have Ryan Kirkley of the CEO of Global Settlement. So. My name is Aaron Stanley. I'm founder of Promenade Advisory. We're a strategic advisory firm operating in the US-Brazil corridor. I'm also the executive producer, head of content at USA House. So we did our first edition of this in Davos back in January, and we're very excited to be doing an edition here at OAS, General Assembly here in Panama. So thanks everyone in Panama for being so receptive to this initiative. So to get started, I just want to give a quick framing. Why are we talking about digital assets, payments, tokenization, these types of things? I think probably everybody's heard of these concepts. There's a lot of narratives, there's a lot of spin, there's a lot of differing sort of perspectives on this technology. But I think what we want to get out of this panel is really to get a very kind of fresh and reality-grounded look at what is the state of this technology right now. And I want everyone in here to walk away with a very fresh perspective on the role that the Americas region is playing in not only advancing this technology, but also in terms of really benefiting from some of these new technologies with regards to stable coins being used for cross-border payments, asset tokenization, new forms of lending, new forms of financial services that are being enabled. So we're going to be hearing all about that here in the next half hour, but I want to turn to my panelists here, and Sushil, I'm going to start with you. We'll ask each of you to introduce yourself, maybe 30, 40 seconds quick on who you are, kind of what your background is, what brings you here, and then we're going to dive in. So Sushil, over to you.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, I guess. So I'm Sushil. I'm the CEO founder of Drop. Drop is a payment platform where we bring two instant payment rails to the checkout. There are two rails in US. One is called the RTP, which is real-time payments by the clearinghouse. For folks who don't know clearinghouse, it is the organization that brings ACH and banking payments. They have a new protocol called RTP. So we bring RTP, and the second rail is stablecoin. We bring both those rails as an instant payment to the checkout. So if you've heard of all of these technologies, stablecoin, all of them are typically used between businesses. It's not used by you and I, right? I don't pay in RTP, I don't pay in stablecoin. We bringing that technology right to the checkout, right to the e-commerce, right for agentic AI payments, so that you can actually make the payments. Why we doing that is because it's just far cheaper than a credit card, and it is absolutely instantaneous. So that's what Drop does.
Hey, my name is Johan. I'm the digital asset business lead for Tower Bank, which is the Panamanian bank, 54-year-old bank, and it's the first crypto-friendly bank in Panama and Latam. And I attempt to say one of the first in the world. And for the last 4 years, we're being the bridge between fiat, like dollars, and digital assets in the region. And we've developed pretty interesting products through all those 4 years, so we can serve people not only in Latam, but in the region using stable coins. That's one of the main use cases we have now.
Yeah, and I'm Ryan Kirkley, CEO of Global Settlement. What we do is we connect the dots between every type of company using stable coins, settlement rails, RTB, Euroclear, all the way over to building central bank digital currencies, stable coins for banks, and commodities on tokenizes assets for quicker and faster settlement and trade.
So Sushil, I'm going to direct this first question to you. And you've been building in this industry for a long time. You've been involved in some of the main blockchain projects over the years, both from kind of a business side as well as a technical side, building some of these products out. And I think for folks who've been involved in following this digital assets industry the last couple of years, there's been a very big shift over the last couple of years from kind of like a mania and just a lot of crazy stuff. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, some of this was induced by COVID stimulus money and money printing and things of that nature. And now the industry has really refined much more dramatically with a focus on really like global payments and global markets. Like we've really kind of identified, okay, what is this technology actually useful for, and really kind of honing in on a couple of use cases where these things actually work very well. And I was hoping you could maybe give us from your vantage point kind of a state of the industry right now from like, I don't want to necessarily call it a rebrand, but it's more of just kind of a funneling into like, okay, what's the main focus right now? What are people most excited about?
Sure, and I would say where we are excited about. Let me just share some stats. Like 50% of the consumer payments in United States are under $25. Most of those payments are still made after COVID. I would say a large amount of those payments, more than 50%, are made using a card. So there's an actual need for an alternative payment systems. So you mentioned about crypto, how it's gone up and down. It's only in the last couple of years, and I guess due to the Genius Act and everything, stablecoin is coming out to be a good use case. But we still see that being used in the DeFi space. It's used in the crypto space. It's not used for the common person's payment. In fact, people say it's crypto, I won't use it. But now with what's happening with the agentic AI and all of those payments, I think there's a real use case for the usage of stablecoin, right, where you can make everyday purchases, but because it could be broken into small microtransactions, you can also use the agentic AI transaction. So there's actually, finally, we have, every couple of years we find a use case. Initially it was just tokens in 2017, then it became tokenized assets, now it's stablecoin, and now with AI going up with agentic AI, I think we have a real use case for crypto. One last quick point. When people think about crypto, they think about the token. I look at it as a technologist, I look at it as the blockchain. So one of the things we have done, and many other payment platforms are going to follow, is we tokenize every aspect of the payment, which is not just the fact that I paid you, But the fact that you have an invoice, that invoice is a dead invoice. You have receipts in your pockets and you throw that away. But that invoice itself can be programmable. And you can do that very easily using, you say crypto, I'm saying blockchain or distributed ledger, where that invoice in your pocket could become a referral incentive, could become an offer, could be. So we do all of that stuff. So there's a lot now that the euphoria of token prices have come down. People are now thinking about useful aspects of how we can use that. Okay.
And then, Johan, I want to turn to you. And from your vantage point at Tower Bank, as you mentioned, Tower Bank has really been one of the earliest adopters of some of these technologies from the institutional bank perspective. And I'd love for you maybe to talk a bit about what that journey has looked like. I think starting back in maybe 2014 is when you guys first started launching some of these projects or exploring these products. Maybe talk about that journey, and what are some of the products that you guys are offering now that have found kind of a real product market fit within the market, and maybe what types of customers and from where are you servicing with some of these products?
Yeah, so we started only giving the ability for people in the crypto space to have a bank account, a dollar bank account, to deposit dollar from crypto activities. And then what we're starting to see is the request from our own clients to settle them stablecoin to dollars. So we made the infrastructure compliant with the Panamanian regulators, seeing the digital assets as they were fiat, as they were dollars. So in that way, we are able for the last 4 years to basically accept USDT, USDC, Bitcoin or Ethereum on a daily basis and settle into fiat so clients can continue to using the regular banking system to pay stuff. And how that being managed now is we have several companies not only in Panama but in the region that I can put like a perfect use case, like let's say on the free zone in Cologne, you have a company that exports goods into Colombia, into Argentina, into Bolivia, into all the time. And all of these countries, they don't have the dollar as their main currency. And what's happening in those countries is that stable coins are easier to get than the dollar. So what's happened is people are using a stablecoin in those countries to make payments to their providers as a bridge to get into the dollar. That's one way to see it. And the other way around is precisely these companies located in these regions are needing to settle a stablecoin to dollars. Like stablecoins are being like a bridge, so they can have dollars and they can pay providers. That's one of the products that's our 90% of our use cases. And for the last year and a half, we've been exploring on credit products on digital assets, or specifically, we've been able to issue Bitcoin-backed loans for the last year and a half ago here in Panama and in the region for people that owns a lot of Bitcoin. They believe that it's like a digital gold, right? So we've been able to serve them to have the ability to take liquidity from Bitcoin to buy a house, to buy a car, refurbish a home. So we are building products around digital assets for 4 years now. So basically those are the main cases, and we're evolving there. Like you may see in the following years tokenization, like on stocks, on everything, like everything will be tokenized on digital assets. So that's the next wave that's coming.
And then Ryan, so kind of building off of what Johan was mentioning here about the stable coins for cross-border payment, there's really a lot of emphasis and a lot of, Johan and I, we actually just met at a conference in Mexico last week where I hurt my ankle coincidentally. But a whole conference just focused on stable coins for cross-border payments. There's just a lot of energy in this area right now. There's a lot of inefficiencies, especially in parts of the world that are a bit isolated from the correspondent, or kind of on the fringes of the correspondent banking system, where if I want to send a payment from here to Brazil, it needs to be routed through all these different banks, et cetera, and it's expensive, it takes time. But maybe, Ryan, we'd love for you to maybe reflect on that use case a bit, like why is there so much product market fit right here? And then tell us a bit more about what Global Settlement is doing to address that.
Yeah, so I think he accurately just outlined non-dollar countries have a major problem here. It's a great thing for the exporter that they're taking US dollar stablecoins. It's a bad thing for the country that now their country is being taken over by the US dollar and they don't have control, tracking, or even tax payments on a lot of these kind of assets. And so we're seeing this mass inefficiency where a USDT or USDC, the most common stablecoins, are being sent around the globe with or without permissions of banks, governments, et cetera, because if you go to most of the global south, you're going to see, particularly like Africa, African countries, et cetera, you're going to see no SWIFT codes, you're going to see limited merchant bank options, limited financial infrastructure, and then more importantly is either gray listed countries, which means they have much, much higher interest rates, or completely sanctioned countries based off of the inability to track money laundering, terrorist financing, et cetera. And so where we come in and where we think this massive opportunity lies is how do you level up the next step? USDC and UST are great as assets of vehicles for liquidity. What they're not, though, is the actual settlement between different currencies or moving money into economies. And so what we do is we go into every single country, either partner direct with the bank, or we partner into the government itself, whether it's a central bank, a state bank, and build either a central bank digital currency or a stable coin in the local currency that allows us to be the direct settlement rails across, and then we can settle via US Treasuries, gold, or euros, or really any asset, whether it's rare earths, copper, et cetera. And so that's where we see a huge demand right now is tokenizing resources these countries have to then allow that to be the current settlement value mechanism to be able to move assets quickly.
And then I want to pose this question to each of you, but what do you see as really the big value unlock of all this stuff? I think sometimes for people who maybe aren't like really immersed in the payments industry or don't necessarily have an idea of like how a lot of this financial transactions move behind the scenes. It's like, oh, I just pay with my credit card and it works, great. Like, why do we need anything new, right? But there's a lot of just kind of antiquated infrastructure behind some of this stuff that is essentially moving much slower than perhaps like the goods and services that's being used to purchase. But maybe Sushil, I'm going to turn this to you. I'd love your reflection on that, and then also add like one more layer to that question, which is we've been seeing in Latin America the last few years, we've been seeing the growth of real-time payment systems. So like things like Pix in Brazil, and I believe Colombia just launched one recently, which I can't remember the name of, unfortunately, but it was fairly recently. And it looks like there's going to be, in the next 2 or 3 years, there's going to be a lot of interest in these real-time payment systems. So yeah. I guess looking at from why is a blockchain-based dollar or currency, where does this kind of fit into this whole stack, this whole payment stack of the future, and why is this so important right now?
No, sure. Great question, by the way. So yeah, Pix is what RTP is in US. US has RTP and FedNow. There are two technologies. And the complementing, and I wouldn't say it competes, in some ways it competes, but not, it could complement each other, is the USDC blockchain technology. And both are efficient in terms of they're cheap, they're instantaneous. But in terms of the availability of RTP and FedNow and the banking instant payment, it's limited in US. US did not mandate, like in Brazil and India, it was mandated, so every bank had to build it. In US, we have about 5,000 banks. Most of them do not have RTP, I can tell you, and they can, if some can receive, some can't send. So the issue is that in the meantime, we have blockchain technology, which is all you need is an internet and a wallet, and you can make a payment. So there itself. So while every bank in US gets RTP, and they will eventually, because if they want to be in instant payment, they have to. Stablecoin has a really good solution out there where people can pay using stablecoin. And you need more solutions like Drop. I'm sure there'll be 100 more platforms like that. But I think the game changer with stablecoin is it could completely change the way payments are made. It's not just about low cost, like we charge 0.5%, which is really cheap. But it could really, this tokenization that you do in payments can absolutely change. Like, what if I tell you that there could be a stable coin that will pay you to make a payment? And we're thinking of that, which is very different than what the card companies do, where the card companies, the way it works, I'll share one more stats with everyone, US stats, not global, is 40% of the cards in the United States do not have any rewards. most of us have here cards which pay you reward every time you pay. But 40% of those cards are low-income people, and they do not get rewarded when they use a card. In fact, they have to pay, right? So there's quite a bit of imbalance there. Most of us are addicted to cards, but then the merchant is paying for it, or somebody else is paying at a 30% interest, and you are basically getting a reward from that. It's a zero-sum game. Stablecoin right now has an opportunity to change that game, by which you probably can democratize the entire reward systems, right? Where you get a cashback or you get a stablecoin back when you make a payment, and I think that is the power of it. It's not been utilized. We're trying to do that. I'm sure others will do that. But there's an absolutely implicit power in the stable coins, which we haven't seen yet. All we've seen is the crypto DeFi, and we want to bring it to the masses because it'll be far, far cheaper. To me, it'll reduce the inflation, the card inflation that's been introduced for the last 70 years. And I think the entire world, and based on what I just heard Ryan is doing, I think it could be a global phenomenon. Yeah.
Johan, do you want to take this question? From your vantage point, what do you see as really the big unlock from this technology? And maybe why should maybe folks in here in this room who are representatives of governments in the region or other types of business verticals, like why is this something that they should be paying attention to?
I mean, we've seen a lot of interesting use cases on a corporate side, on the institutional side with companies. And I would say one of the most benefits of digital assets, specifically stable coins, precisely are, for example, these kind of businesses on the free zone had been struggled to charge those clients in Colombia, in Venezuela, in all of this economy because of the lack of access to the dollar. So now with a stable coin, they're not only being able to charge those clients, but to grow markets on those economy. So on a business base, that's a great use cases for stablecoin that are being doing good for businesses so they can grow on those terms. And for the other way around, I always talk about this use case because it's pretty famous in the last 2 years. Bolivia was a country that has a prohibition for cryptocurrency 2 years ago. And for some mismanagement of their government, they run out of dollars. They didn't have any dollars in the country. So businesses like importers couldn't pay their providers, so they were like on pretty heavy problems. So they need to lift up the prohibition on cryptocurrency so businesses can access to a stablecoin as a bridge to access dollars so they can pay their providers and the economy start to moving on in Bolivia. So that was a quick solution, not made by the government, but needed by the government in this specific case. And the adoption in Bolivia was one of the fastest speed adoptions of a country in the last 2 years because of necessity. And then when people get know about these technologies and they know that it's faster, it's cheaper in some cases, you have more traceability. That's the other layer that we haven't talked about, but there's more information on the blockchain and transactions that there's on the fiat if you see it on the technology base. So I think those one of the most important cases that are impacting not only here in Panama per se, but in all the time for this kind of use cases.
Yeah, the Bolivia case is actually really interesting because, yeah, like you mentioned, about like 2 years ago, this technology, like cryptocurrency, anything was just banned outright in the country, and then now you're seeing a lot of adoption. Even if you go to the duty-free store at the airports, like the items are priced in USDT, the Tether stablecoin, and also. I live in Brazil at the moment, and we have, in Sao Paulo, there's actually a very large community of Bolivia, like a large Bolivian community of people who send remittances back and forth. And I was talking to some of the service providers there recently. Like if you're sending for these folks to send money back on this corridor from Sao Paulo to Bolivia, because it's not a corridor that has much liquidity to it, the rates these people are paying, it's like 12 to 14% like per transaction just to send money from like, which is insane. That's like insanely high amount. And so there's, and also what a lot of people don't realize also is like the U.S. to Mexico remittance corridor. There's a significant, I don't know what the exact numbers off the top of my head, but like a significant portion of that is running on blockchain stablecoin rails right now as well, in the billions of dollars a year. So maybe Ryan, I'm going to throw that same question to you. Like, what do you see as like the big unlock of this technology, and particularly from what you're building with kind of this interconnected global liquidity network? How can that really what can that unlock in the Americas region here?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think why a government does this or why anyone should be looking at this, there's three simple reasons. One is today to send money, the average remittance cost is 7.8% globally. It gets as high as 15 to 18% in Africa and certain global south countries. Just what you do to the poorest citizens that are reliant on that money and the ability for economic growth there is an overnight reason why almost every country should be looking at this. The second, though, is the same on the import-export. The average fees run 1 to 3%. Again, that's just money leaving your economy at all times. Then the third, and we kind of hinted at it, but it really is the ability to have track traceability on everything, all the way down to being able to whitelist or pre-approve where this money can go. And so say you're doing a $3 billion infrastructure hydroelectric dam project. Now, for the first time ever, we can literally say we know where every single dollar went downstream to every single employee. There's no such thing as bribes. There's no such thing as corruption. You can really eliminate it. Now, that's not always the most popular thing in certain countries, but writ large, that's a huge benefit to the world. And so we see, these opportunities coming together to really be able to create a more democratized banking and monetary system that lifts the poorest up, helps countries grow incredibly fast, but also creates the transparency and safety that likely eliminates a lot of the bad actors in society.
And then, so one final question I'll pose to the group here, as we've got about 5-6 minutes left. I think, so Johan and I, we met at this conference in Mexico last week, just focused on stable coins. And I think that the big takeaway from this conference, you really had most of the major players from the region, even globally, at this event. And I think the big takeaway is that the technology exists. We're like 95% of the way there. The regulations are coming into place in a lot of these countries. Like you have the Genius Act passed in the U.S. that put in a regulatory framework for how stablecoins can be issued and how they're backed and all these types of things. How the reserves need to be managed, and in other countries like in Europe, you have the MiCA regulations. Brazil has regulations coming into place. Like pretty much all these major markets, regulations are coming into place. So it's not really like a huge hurdle anymore. You can't necessarily like, oh, we don't know the rules, so we're not going to touch this stuff, right? But I'd be interested in hearing each of your perspectives on this is clearly like this is the trajectory of this is where things are going, right? This is where the payments industry is going. This is where financial services is going. We're not quite there yet. What is sort of maybe the main implementation gap, I guess, from each of your respective vantage points what's the chasm that needs to be crossed here? And maybe how long might this take? Are we talking 2-3 years? We're talking 5 years, 10 years? Sushil?
Sure, yeah. You're right. The regulation is no more an excuse, I would say. It's really adoption and making it really easy for consumers to use it, at least for us. One of the big hurdle we have, or a challenge that we have, is to bring it to every point of sale where it's easy said than done, because every technology on a point of sale is different. So the whole integration. But this is something that's been done before. So this is now we're talking about regular technology integration and making it really easy. Initially, instant banking, we think it's going to, in US, is going to be what people are going to gravitate towards. And then they're the same users who will gravitate towards stablecoin. So we are focusing specifically on the Gen Z. They're more used to digital dollar or digital currencies as such. But I think it's now just a matter of adoption and us bringing it everywhere. So there's no more, hey, I can't use it. I can use it for e-commerce, but I can use it in a convenience store. So I think it's now us marketing and focusing, and that's what we're doing right now. So.
Johan?
I think stable coins now are in a stage like I would say 30 years ago, whether credit cards or debit cards, it took like 30 years to be like a new normal for everyone to use a card to pay stuff, not only on stores, but also on the internet. But I would say stable coins and digital assets will be faster. I can say like between 3 and 5 years, all of us will be using digital assets, and sometimes we don't even know that we are using it. That's where we head up. Like, when you have that kind of experience, is where adoptions really get through, because you need to understand how many confirmation does the blockchain need to send a transaction. You just send it, and you know that's going to take a few seconds. So I believe there's going to take like between 3 and 5 years, because the more use cases are successful in the region, we're going to start using it more.
Yeah, the credit card analogy is interesting because even like 30 years ago, people were terrified of buying something online. What do you mean I'm going to put my credit card on the internet and like what, you know, someone's just going to take my credit card number and steal my information, right? But we've developed systems to encrypt that, and unfortunately hacks do happen and these things do get leaked, unfortunately. But the fear of using your credit card on the internet is not a blocker at this point, right?
Can I just make one comment very quickly?
Sure.
On this, I think you said 5-7 years, I do agree. But I think this agentic AI and the usage of stablecoin, that is the one that's the tipping point that will make everyone use stablecoin.
I mean, it's already here, so that's...
Interestingly, I completely disagree with that. I don't think agentic AI will be spending your money. Monetary spend is a human interaction. There will always be a human element on that. But I think to that point is where I see the biggest challenge is actually the tech. What no one talks about here is there's a reason why governments hate stablecoins. It's for money laundering. There's a reason why Bitcoin was banned by everybody for the first 8 years. It's because the #1 use case, the #1 actual transaction was drug trafficking. And so the problem was the tech that built this decentralized world where you couldn't track, trace, or say where the money came from, who held it, or even more importantly, did that money pass through an Iranian server as it's connecting around the world. And so, you know, as we started to build, I mean, we came from the perspective of advising banks and governments for the last 5 years. And what we constantly were told was, hey, we need to find a way to take this great technology and all the benefits we just talked about and actually make it where it's compliant. If you're talking, I mean, let's say a world where agentic payments happen. You have to know the human behind it. You can't just be able to say your agent sent money to Iran and I had nothing to do with it. No, you have to be able to hold them accountable. And the same thing goes for every business, government, central bank, et cetera, whether it's audits of do they have the dollars in their central bank? I mean, as we've seen there, is it they have the gold reserves? Is it all the way over to are they lending their lines of credit or their actual assets in the bank multiple times? Can we check that? And that's where I think the tech and what we're building has to catch up to that is, you know, how do you solve for those kind of issues?
Awesome. Well, we ended that panel exactly as the timer ran out, so nicely done, everyone. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, Johan, Sushil. Really appreciate your time, appreciate your expertise, and thank you everyone from the audience for watching and listening here. And we'll be around, so if any folks have questions about anything that we've just talked about here, if you want to learn a bit more, the three of these individuals are really incredible resources, so I would encourage you to find them and have a quick chat. So thank you, and we'll kick it over to Salome for the next panel here.
Last like 7 hours.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Sushil, Johan, and Ryan for that conversation on digital assets, payments, and tokenizations in the Americans. The AI conversation is coming up, so if you're waiting for that one too, please remain in your seats. We're actually going to have, and we're going to move into a very, very interesting and high-level conversation about investing in Panama's future, the growth, the connectivity, and the regional competitiveness. So I want you to please help me welcome into stage again Jason Marsack, Vice President and Senior Director of the Adrian Arch Latin America Center at the Atlantic Council.
Well, good morning and welcome to today's conversation on investing in Panama's future, growth, connectivity, and regional competitiveness. I'm going to set the stage for the panel in a moment, but really pleased to be up on stage by three incredible panelists who I'll more formally introduce in a moment. Minister of Economy and Finance, Felipe Chapman, wonderful to have you here. Jackie Byrne de Mena, Jackie is CEO of Byrne Holdings, wonderful to have you. And Gianpiero Leoncini, Executive Vice President of CAF, all of whom I'll introduce more formally in a moment, but pleased to be sharing the stage. I also realize that I didn't pack correctly because I have a blue tie on. I should have a red tie on, given the game today, so maybe I can find a new tie. Yeah, I'll have to find a different tie at some point. I will have my Panama shirt that will come out later, and I'll send that picture to the minister later. But it's a real pleasure to be here in Panama City for a discussion that sits at the intersection of national security and regional opportunity. As you all know, Panama has long been defined by its connectivity. This is anchored by the canal, it's supported by a world-class logistics platform, and it's also positioned Panama at the center of global trade flows. Today, that role is continuing to evolve. At the center of that story is, of course, the canal and the broader logistics ecosystem, which continues to generate billions in annual value and reinforce Panama's position as one of the world's most important services and trade-linked economies. So the question now is not whether Panama is connected, I think we know the answer to that, but how to further convert that connectivity into sustained competitiveness in what is increasingly a more fragmented and also volatile global economy that's shaped by nearshoring infrastructure investment, fiscal pressures, and shifting supply chains. So to explore these questions, we are, of course, fortunate to be joined by these three excellent speakers who represent government, finance development, and the private sector. As I mentioned, Felipe Chapman is Panama's Minister of Economy and Finance. The minister is responsible for guiding fiscal policy, strengthening macroeconomic stability, and also shaping the investment climate at a time when Panama is navigating global economic shifts. I'll also say from a personal note, I've been quite privileged to have hosted the minister multiple times in Washington, D.C., to have had many opportunities to engage with the minister. Here in Panama, was sharing beforehand that this is actually my third trip to Panama, and we're only halfway through the year. So shows the importance of Panama and all the great work that we do with Minister Chapman. Next to the minister is Jackie Byrne de Mena, the CEO of Byrne Holdings. She leads one of Panama's most prominent private sector groups with interests spanning investment, real estate, commercial development. Jackie brings a real grounded perspective on how competitiveness and investment conditions can really translate into real economic activity. My favorite part of Jackie's bio is the fact that she is a member of the Adrian Arch Latin America Center's Advisory Council, and it's so wonderful to work so closely with Jackie, not just this panel, but all the work that we do together. Next to Jackie is Gianpiero Leoncini. Gianpiero is the Executive Vice President of CAF, which is the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean. He works on advancing regional infrastructure, integration, sustainable development finance across one of the world's, of course, most connected dependent regions. I'll also add to Gianpiero's bio that will, of course, I know I have at least another trip, or probably more trips to Panama between now and then, when CAF will host its annual conference here in Panama the third week of January. And Gianpiero, that was quite an incredible success this year again. I also had the pleasure of knowing Gianpiero for probably about 25 years, where I happened to spend some time working at the Andy community where I first met Gianpiero. So really, really excellent to have this incredible panel, we're going to focus on three lenses of Panama's future. We'll look at the policy, the private investment, and also regional development and finance. So let me start with the government's perspective. And as we look at the next phase of growth, Mr. Chapman, Panama's growth story has long been anchored, as I mentioned, the canal, logistics, and services. What must be the next phase of that growth model so that Panama can create more jobs, attract new industries, and also at the same time reduce its exposure to external shocks?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. As you know, well, the red tide's a must, especially since I couldn't wear the team shirt, no?
Yeah.
Would have been a little bit awkward. Though I must say that I got a visit a few months ago where somebody helping Panama with something important for us. And he's like, I've got Panama's shirt. And I told me over the phones, like something just to mention. And actually, when he stepped into my office, he was wearing suit and tie and the shirt on top of it. So I was like, that's very clever. It got my attention.
You'll see the picture with that later.
And first of all, I must start by and you probably heard this before, but not everyone in the audience. First time as a public servant, and many would ask, why would I get into this troubled position? Because I'm a true believer in the future of Panama. The potential of Panama, we are very much far away from getting even close to the potential of Panama. That's the main reason why I'm sitting here today. And you mentioned something about the canal, and people tend to think about the canal, but actually Panama's economy is highly diversified. The Panama Canal represents about 5% of GDP. Yet, when you add all the ecosystem that surrounds the Panama Canal, which includes multiple other related industries, you might get to a fifth of the GDP. So it becomes a generator of other activities which are leveraged on that. But at the same time, all of those activities, including the Panama Canal, is leveraged on one main or one very important economic comparative advantage, which is geographical position. Very hard to duplicate, by the way.
Yeah, you can't change that.
No. And we are very much aware of that. So much that we truly believe that the opportunities that we have to further develop that geographical position is still, then again, repeating myself, it's way, we're not getting even close to that. And certain of those happen to be also related to other industries that might seem kind of awkward. For instance, tourism. Tourism in Panama has a potential of being a niche player. We don't need to be a mass focus tourism, let's say in all-inclusive hotels, because Panama can focus, first, exploit its geographical position via an air hub in Panama that facilitates getting to Panama. And Panama, even though it's small, is extremely diverse. It's as diverse and not dependent as the economy. Because in a small place, you have history, you have the canal, and when I'm talking about history, we're talking about the first city on the Pacific, actually the first university built in the mainland of the Americas. You have, all of you probably know about being there to the Casco Viejo with the influence that it has originally from Spanish, then the French, then the Americans. You have the Panama Canal, you have the forts, you have beaches. You can be in the same day in the Caribbean and the Pacific. I don't know how many countries you can do that. And you have archipelagos in both Pacific and Atlantic. You have the mountains. You have the culture of the southern part of Panama, which is quite unique. And I can go so on and so forth. In terms of other economic activities, there are three key words, which is you have to build trust, trust, and trust. How do you know if you're doing so? People tend to talk about rating agencies. I tend to look at the markets, where people are putting their money where their mouth is. And one very powerful indicator is the premium risk of the country, which has, we've been able to decrease that premium risk over 65% in less than 2 years. I don't know how many countries have done that. And you might think, why is that important? Not only because being a financial investors in securities, but also a direct investors, because when you calculate your net present value of an investment and your internal rate of return, when you decrease the premium risk, for some strategic investments, it's make or break. So I fully understand that. And it's a barrier to attract direct investment into the country.
Well, I think, Mr., that shows the success that you're having and the success that this government is having insofar as building that trust, and we'll even add maybe trust one or two more times. But when you look at that next phase of that growth, as you're saying, it seems really opportunities to further diversify the economy, right?
Indeed.
And you mentioned tourism. A year or two ago, I went for the day up to Bocas del Toro, right? You can go from the day from Panama City and come back and just see the incredible beauty of the country. Now, Jackie, let me turn to you, because from the perspective of a Panamanian investor, how has the case for investing in Panama changed over the past several years? Where do you see, when you're looking at those investment opportunities, some of the strongest new opportunities for investment that maybe might not have existed or might have existed but weren't as apparent a couple years ago?
Hi. I think consistency has been key for the success of Panama for attracting foreign investment. This has been continuous. We have had laws for over 15 years that have been focused on attractive multinationals to come and settle in Panama. And we have been protecting all these laws to be continuous. And we have some fiscal incentives, but as Minister said, it has to do with the ecosystem. The incentive may be the first thing that attracts a company, but the ecosystem that accompanies is as important as the tax incentive. For example, we do have great connectivity for not only for the business, but also for the movement of people. And then now we have several things coming that are great. We have 10 billion plus investments around the canal. We have the gas pipeline coming, and now Tocumen just mentioned their expansion. Great opportunity for air cargo that has not been developed fully in Panama, connected to now the passenger movement. So for tourism, these are all fabulous news. And I think there are also great opportunities in everything data center connected. I do believe that we are so well located because most of the cables that connect the whole continent pass through the Panama Canal floor. And so milliseconds that you can save through connecting directly to these cables are definitely a competitive advantage. We have still not seen full potential of them. And so there's so many good things coming. I just want them to come faster, if I could. But things are looking great. For me, the two big things that for Panama has been dollar economy and location.
Yeah.
I do agree that those two really have set us apart for bringing foreign investment and trust,
Yeah.
and stability.
Trust and confidence. Now, Gianpiero, you have a vision from CAF that you're looking across the entire region, right? And your CAF was so, just a real congrats to you and to Sergio and the entire CAF team of how much CAF has really grown significantly over the last few years and really become an incredible reference point. And so you're able to see across the region how Panama compares to what other countries are doing. There's many other emerging investment hubs. We talk about all the opportunities in Panama. Where do you see from that broader regional perspective how the genuine competitive advantage that Panama holds? Now, we've spoken about some of that, but when you look compared to other emerging investment hubs.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for having me. No, I think that just by listening to Minister and to Jacqueline right now, you can see one of the secrets in Panama that is quite uncommon in the region, that there is the shared long-term vision between the public and the private sector, knowing very well what are the advantages of the country, its strengths, and investing in them. So for CAF, since we arrived in 2008, we have built an incredibly strong relationship with the country. I've invested in the Panama Canal, in the Tocumen Airport. So we're investing in the strengths of the country, but also trying to look at the sectors where efforts are being carried out to diversify and to make sure that this growth is accompanied with more productivity and with more jobs. Like we're investing in technical education, in water and sanitation, in the agricultural sector. And so both playing on the strengths and trying to help the country boost other priorities to continue in this long-term path. As I say, this is like in a region where we are rather used to polarization and strong changes in direction of our countries. Panama has set a course over decades based on this strong shared vision of our country.
Jean-Pierre, you mentioned technical education. That's for me one thing that really stands out about Panama, and the direction in which Panama is going is also becoming America's education hub. And it just came up with that. We can feel free to coin that phrase. But you have many U.S. universities that already are here in Panama, and many that are actually looking now to setting up campuses where you can get a same degree as if you're studying back in the U.S. You get that same degree studying here in Panama. That helps because of the connectivity through the airport and the other opportunities that are here. But it seems like as we look at kind of where do those future investment opportunities look like, and how to accelerate on some of those different sectors that are ripe for growth, Panama as that education hub really has an opportunity to be able to do so. And Jean-Pierre, you mentioned that as far as your point on technical education.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is just one example, no? But clearly the shared growth of the hemisphere, it depends very much on how well this country works as a logistics hub, you know, as a hub for all types of exchanges. And this is where CAF is going to continue to invest.
Now, Mr. Chapman, let me go back to you, because investors they view Panama as a regional hub, as we've spoken about. They also look, of course, at issues of fiscal stability, legal certainty, execution, and whatnot. What are some of the steps that you're taking, the government's been taking, to further confidence? You talked about trust. What are some of the additional measures, especially from a longer-term perspective, so that companies feel like this is a great bet for investment, not just right now, but a great bet for investment 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road?
I mean, first of all, you have to build the base to further develop that trust, and that's putting the house in order in terms of fiscal conditions, which we've done already. Then start making, after that, producing or accelerating economic growth, which turns into employment. You have to connect those dots, and at the same time, within that plan, visualize what are the sectors that can take the most advantage of basically of your most competitive elements in the economy. One of those, you mentioned connectivity. For instance, in ports, Panama still has the opportunity of developing many more ports, and in terms of leveraging in logistics. Mentioned technology on the last mile of adding value in the process. So there are certain things that you have to do to create the correct ecosystem environment to basically have the results. I remember in one Panama day, one investor, direct investment, came up to me and says, Minister, are you aware that in life, you not only have to do it well and well planned, but you have to also tell this story well. You're doing the first part, you have to do the second. And I tell them, well, that's what we're trying to do. That's why I'm sitting here, to try to convey that message. And with that message, you start creating the conditions for not only foreign investment, which is not for the sake of bringing foreign investment, it's bringing high quality investment, but also domestic investment. So when you create, via transparency, that trust, then that evolves in the investment cycle that you are aiming to achieve now.
And how do you do so in a way that looks out, 5 years down the road to be able to provide that trust and stability for investors that are contemplating whether Panama's a good medium-term, long-term bet?
First, people have to trust that what you see is what you get. And you have to walk the talk. And when somebody comes to you and they have some concerns, and you talk to them and you explain what are your policies, what are your goals, where you work, and when they see that you are actually accomplishing those, and you are basically delivering what you promised, then people don't even have to have a confirmation on writing. They start building that trust and are willing to make decisions based on that.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that I think I've seen, that this is a very results-driven government as well, and that is absolutely key. Now, Jackie, going back to you from a private sector perspective, what does the private sector need, or and as you're talking to other business leaders across Panama, what is necessary to ensure that the country remains more competitive than other emerging alternatives? And as business are deciding whether they should invest in Panama, even domestic industry, what are some of the things that they're looking at and contemplating that are helping to weigh that decision one way or another?
I brought a list. I think very important is the thing is, like, we make this pitch to get all this foreign investment and local investment too. And this piece, the pitch has to become practice, like from the theory to the practice. And the main thing is making all the permits and all the steps for investments as simpler as possible for foreign investors and for local ones. I think there shouldn't be much of a difference. And so having especially most of the government really communicate well so the permits can flow effectively without avoiding bottlenecks and red tapes, that will be something ideal. Now with all the digital part all the process have become better, but they could still be, there's still a way to go there. I also feel that it's very important for foreign investment to acknowledge that the deal flow in Panama, it's quite good. The local partnerships are quite sophisticated, and we're used to handling foreign investment. And that's something that it's key to attract partners and, to also allow local investments to look for finance outside of Panama, which helps us be more efficient into all of our financial future. And one thing I think it's pending, my two sectors that I focus on, which is construction and tourism, both need to create more labor. Those are labor-intensive industries that move the economy, and they permeate to the whole economy base. So this is very important for the economic growth, of course. And one thing that I have on my wish list is the review of the labor code. The local labor code is from the 70s. The world has changed, and I think a thorough review is now necessary. To update, you have, the internet came, a lot of changes came around the world, and we still have a little bit outdated labor code, and I think that will really help for foreign investment too.
Excellent, thank you, Jackie. Maybe, Minister, I'll give you a chance to, if you want to provide any quick response to some of Jackie's comments, I'm going to move back to John Piero.
Well, she mentioned the labor code reform. So She did it in terms I don't have no complaints to that, but so I'm glad she did.
Good. Now, John Piero, one of the consistent challenges that we oftentimes will see, not really across the region, there's a lot of ideas, but it's about execution and moving ideas forward from project conceptualization to actually implementation. Panama, of course, has no shortage of project ideas, and we've spoken about the inroads that have been taken to further execute on projects, but also, as with anything, the opportunities that still exist to accelerate that even further. So moving from ambition to implementation, what do you see from a CAF perspective that separates projects that what separates those projects that successfully reach financing from those projects that just remain on the drawing board? What's going to be critical to move some of these next ideas forward?
Yes, well, from our experience, very clearly, and this is a pattern in the region, project preparation is key, and investing in the pre-investment phase of any project. What we have done at CAF is we have created special funds, which generally are non-reimbursable, to focus on the project preparation phase in infrastructure in particular, and water and sanitation. These are key elements for a strong project preparation. And this is what a development bank can bring, not just the financing, but the technical assistance and the knowledge to help countries prepare better projects. And in particular, by doing this, we can have better quality of expenditure, we can contribute to institutional capacity building, to human capital formation, and also to better regulation. So we are emphasizing all these aspects, and also bringing best practices from what we see around the region and mobilizing resources from outside, from other regions, from other actors. For example, the climate funds, we're very active, and building climate resilience is of key importance in other countries, but here we see it for the canal, for example. No? And with all these instruments, we think we can make a difference in helping our member governments.
When CAF is looking specifically at Panama and moving forward kind of projects, idea to implementation, where have you seen some of the greatest successes recently? I mean, CAF in particular is spending quite a bit of time focused on Panama, your office here, the conference and whatnot. Share a little bit about kind of CAF's excitement for Panama overall and where that comes from.
Well, as I mentioned, it's been almost 20 years, and we have participated in key projects in the Panama Canal, in Tocumen, that's for the next expansion, the sanitation of the Bay of Panama, and well, we are very close partners, constantly in conversation. We are building a new headquarters here in Panama, which will be a hub for innovation and for dialogue in the region, where our board will sit. And we have created our International Economic Forum in Panama 2 years ago. We are looking forward for it to continue to consolidate. This year we had 6,000 business leaders, 8 heads of state. Next year we will do bigger and better. And well, it is very suitable. Like this week we have talked so much about the Amphictyonic Congress that was summoned 200 years ago in Panama, and this is the spirit that guides us also as a bank for regional integration. We are convinced that this is the country where we must be.
Thank you, John Piero. Mr. Chapman, let me go back to you. We have just a couple of minutes left, and I know you also have to end on time for a meeting this afternoon. Panama has ambitious infrastructure and connectivity needs, but of course, public resources are limited, right? There's only not never ending. So how does the government decide, or how does the government actually how does the government weigh which projects are truly strategic and which projects are less strategic, as you're looking at kind of those opportunities for accelerating growth across the country?
First of all, it's the allocation of limited resources, and it's not only the case of Panama. And you have to choose. The four of us sit here and try to come up with a list of projects that Panama needs, and I guarantee you that it's going to exceed the financial capacity or the fiscal capacity of the country. Therefore, you have to choose. And how do you choose? You choose between, and it's sometimes you find yourself between a rock and a hard place, because you have to choose what the people, what are the needs, the necessity of the people, which is what we're working for the people of Panama. But at the same time, they gotta be strategic. It's what adds more value, not only from an economic, financial point of view, but also from the socio-political point of view, in terms of what elements or how can we add value to the country to improve the quality of lives of people. And for instance, water is a huge necessity, but at the same time improves the quality of people. Public transportation, where people have a better quality of life and they have actually better productivity at work, and bring up better families, healthier families, to protect their environment. So there are certain things, and you have to choose them. And when public money cannot flow there, you can bring private equity, private money as well, or make private-public partnerships to make it work.
Well, thank you so much, Minister. We're going to have to end there. I have many more questions, but I see on the red screen that it says all caps that time's up, and so I want to abide by that. I think the message you got on this panel was the commitment, I think, from the government, Mr. Chapman, the work that you continue to do to build that trust, to build that confidence, to put forward a stable macroeconomic environment, an environment that's conducive for not just foreign investment, but as Jackie was speaking about as well, as a domestic investor as well, for domestic investment in key industries, whether it's tourism, whether it's construction, whether it's AI data centers, and all these ripe possibilities. And from Gianpiero and the CAF perspective, I think the excitement for Panama, the investment that CAF in particular continues to make in Panama, and what that means is we're here convened on the sidelines of the OAS General Assembly, the role of Panama writ large across the region as a hub for investment and as a hub for greater connectivity and bringing people together to help to create better futures for all of us.
If I may just sum it up, Panama is a country that it's about to take off. I encourage you, all of us, to join that opportunity that doesn't come around or just comes around probably every 100 years.
About to take off. Thank you so much, Minister. And
Gracias, muchas gracias al ministro, a Jackie, a Gianpiero y a Jason por esa conversación tan interesante. Les pedimos que las personas que están de este lado puedan tomar asiento para una última conversación antes del almuerzo, una conversación sobre el futuro del Canal de Panamá, sobre su crecimiento, sobre su resiliencia y sobre su liderazgo global. Así que, por favor, en cuanto puedan, las personas que nos acompañan del lado derecho, si se pueden tomar sus asientos para escuchar a nuestro próximo panelista y así poder darle paso entonces a esa conversación antes de movernos hacia la siguiente conversación. We ask you to please take your seats as soon as you can to give space to the next conversation before our lunch break. And we would really appreciate you all staying in those seats to be able to move forward with the conversation. Thank you. Perfecto, muchas gracias. Los invitamos de nuevo a que tomen sus asientos y de hecho la razón por la que este panel lo estoy presentando en español es porque esta conversación va a ser en español. Así que les pido por favor que den la bienvenida al escenario a María Fernanda Bosmosky, directora de Impacto de Operaciones y líder de Centroamérica para el Centro Adrian Arts de América Latina del Atlantic Council. Gracias.
Buenas tardes a todos. Señor ministro, gracias por acompañarnos y déjeme comenzar agradeciéndole especialmente por sacar el tiempo en un día tan importante como hoy, porque juega la Sele. Entonces, todo
y vamos a ganar.
Y va a ganar. Todo lo demás es complementario, ¿no? Esa es la prioridad del día. Entonces, gracias de nuevo, señor ministro. Vamos a tratar de ser tan eficientes como el canal y acabar la conversación en 15 minutos. Para el Atlantic Council es un gusto recibirlo nuevamente, esta vez en su país, continuar una conversación que hemos venido construyendo ya durante meses, señor ministro. Hemos tenido, y yo a título personal, el privilegio de trabajar con usted en distintas capacidades y de acompañar de cerca las discusiones sobre el futuro económico, logístico y estratégico de Panamá. Y que hoy en día esas conversaciones son sumamente relevantes para toda la región, pero Panamá siempre en el centro. Ahora, el canal conecta más de 180 rutas marítimas, 170 países, cerca de 2.000 puertos. Sabemos todos aquí los datos del 5% del comercio mundial y más del 70% de la carga que transita por el canal o tiene origen o tiene destino en los Estados Unidos. Señor ministro, en un contexto de disrupciones en el Mar Rojo, de tensiones energéticas, de presión sobre cadenas de suministro, el canal pues ya no es únicamente una ruta comercial eficiente, sino que también es una infraestructura crítica para la seguridad económica del hemisferio. Y ahí es donde yo quisiera empezar esta conversación, señor ministro. ¿Cómo debemos entender hoy el canal de Panamá? ¿Como una vía comercial o como un activo estratégico o ambas cosas a la vez?
Bueno, buenas tardes, María Fernanda, y nuevamente muchas gracias al Atlantic Council, a USA House, por hosting este evento tan importante en el marco de la Asamblea General de los Estados Americanos, la Organización de Estados Americanos, OEA. Ciertamente, dado la situación que se está dando en el estrecho de Hormuz, la ruta del Canal de Panamá nuevamente sale adelante como una ruta confiable, segura y neutral a todas las naciones para lo que es el comercio mundial. Nosotros hemos visto desde que inició este conflicto y esta tensión en el estrecho de Hormuz un incremento importante o considerable de lo que son tránsitos. Nosotros para el año 2026, previo a el conflicto, estábamos viendo un promedio de tránsitos de 34. Eso rápidamente aumentó a 38 tránsitos promedio y hemos visto días de 40 y 41 tránsitos. Uno de los principales segmentos que ha mostrado un repunte importante es precisamente el LNG, que luego de lo que fue la invasión a Ucrania, mucho de ese producto que salía de de la costa del Golfo y transitaba el canal de Panamá rumbo a la costa este de Asia, empezó a fluir hacia Europa y gran parte de ese tránsito se había perdido. Ahora, dado la situación que se está dando en Hormuz, estamos viendo un repunte de ese segmento, en adición a otros segmentos, lo que es el segmento de portacontenedores, lo que es quimiqueros, dry bulks, entre otros. Ciertamente, el canal de Panamá ha estado preparado no solamente por un buen plan de inversión, de modernización y mantenimiento de la infraestructura durante estos 26 años, sino también una fuerza laboral comprometida y un uso eficiente del recurso hídrico, agua dulce para la operación del Canal de Panamá, lo que ha permitido entonces poder manejar ese incremento de la demanda. Y hacia futuro, el Canal de Panamá, como hemos venido nosotros presentando en distintos foros, desde el año 2024 veníamos trabajando en una visión estratégica 2035, la cual fue presentada en abril del año 2025 y que incluye 38 iniciativas, de las cuales 4 son proyectos estratégicos con un monto de inversión de 8.500 millones de dólares para los próximos 10 años, siendo el más importante la construcción de un nuevo reservorio o un lago que es el lago de Río Indio, el cual va a darle seguridad hídrica al Canal de Panamá para los próximos 50 años, sumado también a la construcción de un corredor energético para el trasiego de petroquímicos, en este caso LPG, hasta 2.5 millones de barriles día, construcción de 2 nuevas terminales portuarias, una en el Atlántico y una en el Pacífico, que aumentará la capacidad en 5 millones de TEUs, y también la construcción de un corredor logístico para poder habilitar lo que es la Riviera Oeste del Canal de Panamá. Ciertamente estos proyectos y el plan estratégico con visión hacia el 2035, lo que va a lograr es aumentar el valor de la ruta del Canal de Panamá, la resiliencia de la ruta, pero también lograr la integración de todos los activos logísticos que cuenta la República de Panamá como activos panameños al servicio del mundo.
Gracias, ministro. Y creo que ahí eso es un tema y unos puntos importantes, porque esa crisis hídrica que hubo en el 2023-24, el canal no solo se recuperó, sino que mostró una resiliencia importante, no solo para el país, no solo para el hemisferio, pero para el mundo. Un poco en esa línea de sus comentarios, usted habló de la fuerza laboral, de este plan de visión 2035, pero más allá de eso, ¿qué cambió estructuralmente en la gestión del canal para que los clientes internacionales confíen en que Panamá puede manejar el próximo shock hídrico o climático o lo que fuere?
Bueno, ciertamente lo que fue la sequía del año 2023-2024 dejó un grado de aprendizaje importante que nos permite estar mejor preparados para próximos eventos de sequía como el que parece se va a estar dando en la tercera o cuarta trimestre del año 2026. Sin embargo, a pesar de que todavía no ha iniciado el efecto del fenómeno del Niño, ya el Canal de Panamá ha empezado desde inicio de este año a hacer algunas acciones para poder hacer un mejor uso de recurso hídrico, gracias a esas lecciones aprendidas del año 2023-24 que nos permitan a nosotros ser más eficientes. De igual forma, también nosotros ya anunciamos una pequeña ajuste en lo que es el calado de 50 pies a 49.5 pies a partir del julio 3 de este año. Y nosotros, siendo muy responsables con la industria, nuestros clientes y usuarios, vamos a estar anunciando, según sea necesario, distintas medidas. Pero también bien importante, a diferencia del año 2023-2024, donde nuestros niveles de los lagos estaban mucho más bajos de lo que tenemos hoy, para el año 2026, los niveles del lago, gracias a una temporada lluviosa por encima del promedio en el año 2025 y una estación seca en el 2026, donde recibimos también precipitación, nuestros niveles del lago están en una mejor ubicación y unos mejores niveles en comparación al año 2023, lo cual nos permite a nosotros poder estar mejor preparados, no solamente las acciones que te comentaba, sino a nivel de los niveles del lago hacia el futuro. Pero también, nuevamente, hemos avanzado muy bien con ese diálogo con las comunidades para poder avanzar con el proyecto más importante que tiene la República de Panamá, que es el lago de Río Indio.
regresando un poco a los comentarios iniciales, el tema inevitable creo es el de la neutralidad. El canal siempre ha operado sobre ese principio, pero hoy pues todo está mucho más politizado, por decirlo de manera simplista. ¿Cómo, ministro, se preserva la neutralidad del canal cuando los usuarios ya no separan a veces la logística de la geopolítica?
Bueno, el Canal de Panamá siempre será una ruta neutral, una ruta confiable y segura para todas las naciones. Y la autoridad del Canal de Panamá se mantiene alejado de lo que es la política, se mantiene como una institución técnica donde las decisiones se toman en función a los mejores intereses de la operación del Canal de Panamá y de los mejores intereses del comercio mundial, para poderle garantizar a todos nuestros usuarios y clientes de que la ruta se mantendrá segura, neutral y confiable para todas las naciones del mundo que utilizan el Canal de Panamá. Todo lo relacionado a la parte política y geopolítica lo maneja, por supuesto, el presidente de la República con el canciller, y el Canal de Panamá se mantiene como una institución confiable, técnica para lo que es el comercio mundial, siempre manteniendo la ruta neutral y segura.
Finalmente, viendo un poco el tiempo, pero mirando hacia adelante, la autoridad del Canal de Panamá ha planteado, como hemos venido hablando, esta hoja de ruta de los 10 años para reforzar la sostenibilidad, la competitividad, crecimiento y siempre con el agua como eje central. Esta visión 2035 se trata de asegurar más tránsitos, de diversificar el modelo de negocios del canal, de convertir a Panamá en una plataforma logística de mayor valor agregado para las Américas. Al final, ¿cuál es esa métrica de éxito?
Mira, primeramente es garantizar la confiabilidad y el valor de la ruta del Canal de Panamá. Por eso la importancia del proyecto del lago Río Indio, el proyecto más importante que tiene la República de Panamá y seguramente uno de los proyectos más importantes que existen en el hemisferio americano por la importancia que tiene ese proyecto para la ruta y el comercio mundial. Pero en adición a eso, cada una de estas iniciativas lo que busca es fortalecer y aumentar el valor de la ruta interoceánica y crear un ecosistema marítimo, logístico, alrededor de lo que es la ruta interoceánica del Canal de Panamá. Por eso las distintas acciones y oportunidades de inversión que estamos realizando es precisamente para lograr nosotros esa integración de todos los activos logísticos para el beneficio de lo que es el comercio mundial, pero también para generar suficientes oportunidades para los panameños en empleo, oportunidades, desarrollo económico y por supuesto también poder aumentar las capacidades y la educación de nuestra fuerza laboral.
Una pregunta más, señor ministro. Es claro que Panamá entiende el papel que juega el canal, no solo para el país, sino es un activo esencial para el mundo. Digamos, esa responsabilidad que recae sobre sus hombros, creo que Panamá ha entendido muy bien y hemos visto en estos últimos meses que hay compañías que no solo confían en que Panamá pues puede manejar esos flujos que han aumentado, pero también hay un precio por pagar por reliability, por saber, tener la certeza de que vas a pasar. En esa tónica quisiera preguntar un poco sobre cómo ven ustedes esa responsabilidad, que es una responsabilidad para y hacia el mundo.
Mira, nosotros mantenemos un diálogo y una comunicación permanente con nuestros clientes y usuarios, precisamente para poder poner al servicio de los clientes y usuarios productos que le den esa confiabilidad y ese reliability que busca el comercio mundial. Por eso nosotros el año pasado lanzamos un nuevo producto que era el producto de LOTSA, que le permite a nuestros clientes generar reservas a largo plazo para que puedan tomar decisiones de negocio y de ruta con suficiente tiempo de antelación. De igual forma también nosotros mantenemos una llamada con el mercado de manera trimestral donde estamos presentando información no solamente del aspecto operativo del Canal de Panamá, sino también de los proyectos, cómo van en función a ese plan estratégico o esa visión a largo plazo. Y por último, también nosotros estamos cada vez dando más información sobre la operación del Canal de Panamá para que nuestra base de clientes, nuestra base de usuarios, tome decisiones con base en información y de esa manera nosotros seguir fortaleciendo esa confianza, esa resiliencia y esa, neutralidad que es tan importante del Canal de Panamá hacia el futuro. Nuevamente, todas estas acciones van siempre orientadas en función al comercio mundial y en función a que los clientes tengan suficiente información para que tomen sus decisiones en cuanto a el comercio mundial.
Súper. Sí, fundamental esos temas. Para cerrar, ministro, ¿cuál es el pronóstico para el partido esta noche?
Bueno, yo creo que Panamá gana 2-0.
2-0. Okay.
Hoy ganamos 2-0, hoy vamos a ganar.
Ok, perfecto. A todos en la sala, muchas gracias por su tiempo. Ministro, no sé si quiere cerrar con algunas palabras adicionales, algún tema que no abordamos.
Bueno, ciertamente yo creo que Panamá está viviendo una oportunidad importante y Panamá está preparado para aprovechar esa oportunidad. Nosotros hemos venido durante muchos años preparándonos, todos los panameños preparándonos para este momento. Y este es el momento de Panamá, este es el momento del hemisferio americano. Nosotros estamos muy contentos de que se esté realizando la Asamblea General de los Estados Americanos en Panamá en el marco de esta conmemoración del Congreso Anfitriónico que fue hace 200 años, porque nos da una oportunidad a nosotros de presentar a nuestro país, una oportunidad para presentar todo lo que nosotros estamos realizando y con este plan de inversión del Canal de Panamá, ciertamente nosotros seguimos construyendo el valor y fortaleciendo el valor de la ruta de Panamá, pero también fortaleciendo lo que es la plataforma de transporte, que no solo se limita al Canal de Panamá, estamos hablando de aeropuertos, estamos hablando de un sistema de conectividad terrestre. Hemos anunciado también la posibilidad de construir un ferrocarril que conecte con Centroamérica. En fin, es una serie de proyectos de inversión que logra fortalecer la posición de Panamá y la confianza en nuestro país para hacer inversión, para hacer negocios y para poder ser esa plataforma de servicio al mundo.
Sí, justo en el panel anterior se hablaba de justamente el ecosistema.
Así es.
Eso es clave. Señor ministro, muchas gracias por su tiempo.
Muchas gracias, María Fernanda. Muchas gracias a todos.
Gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, we welcome you to enjoy lunch at this time, and we're going to be back at 1:20 for the next panel. So we are hoping to see you back here. Señoras y señores, esperamos que disfruten este espacio para el almuerzo. A la 1:20 regresaremos con el próximo panel. Muchas gracias.